What is up, guys? Team Ecofist here with another video, and I'm back from vacation. I needed some time to put stuff together for video because my time is always very limited nowadays. But I was able to put together a deck profile that I think is nice to show off because it does include stuff from the new 2021 Megatins, and I think that's pretty cool to show off. That way you guys can see some of the changes. And it's been a few months since I've done deck profile on Salamangreat, so I figured why not post a deck profile and show you guys how I think the deck should be piloted going forwards, at least for a duration of time. We'll see how the meta unfolds and progresses with the release of more sets coming up, in addition to pending ban list in the start of the new year. But that's a whiles away. We've still got a couple more months before that happens, so we're basically going off of what we currently have access to. But let's go ahead and jump into the profile. Before we do, if you guys are not subscribed already, make sure you go ahead and smash that subscribe button, turn notification bell on, and obviously give the video a thumbs up. That's always extremely helpful too. But let's go ahead and take a dive into the current Salamangreat list that I'm playing. Alrighty, so we are going to start with our main deck, of course, per usual. So, starting with the Salamangreat lineup, we have 3 copies of Foxy. Foxy is a Pot of Duality, and it's a special summon from Grave in addition to a pop of a face-up spell or trap. So it's really a lot of effects combined into one card. It's a ridiculously broken card. I love this card so much. It saves you in so many situations. So 3 Foxy, in my opinion, is definitely a requirement. Then I play 2 Spinny. Some people play 3, some people play 2. I never see anyone play less than 2, but it kind of changes per list that you see. Sometimes people will play 3, and as I said, sometimes people will play 2. But I personally prefer playing 2 in this particular list because I would have to cut a card, and I didn't want to cut any cards in particular in here to fit in a 3rd Spinny, and 2 gets the job done. So I said we'll just stick with the 2. Then, of course, we have our 1 copy of Gazelle, because Gazelle is Gazelle. It's basically any Salamangreat card in your deck as well, because you get the free dump, which in this deck means just about everything towards its strategy. So Gazelle is definitely a requirement. Then we play 2 copies of Jack Jaguar. I contemplated playing a 3rd, but it's not really necessary. 2 is perfectly fine. It's your recyclability of your extra deck, which is very important, and then usually it'll trigger your Sunlight Wolf when it's summoned onto the field, which is also very, very important. And the last Salamangreat monster is 1 Falco. Basically, Falco is just here to bounce stuff from your field to the hand. Like, let's say you normal summon a Gazelle, and you dump the Falco, you can bounce the Gazelle back to hand to summon the Falco. Then you can make a Balinx, and seeing you normal summon the Gazelle, you can still special summon it from your hand, which is pretty cool. So Falco has a lot of implications with just kind of summoning itself out, which is really cool. Then we have 3 copies of Flame Buffalo for some of our Cybers support. Buffalo is great because it's just a draw 2 by discarding any Cybers monster when it's sent to the graveyard. So when you do something like that and you put your Salamangreat resources in your graveyard, you're fueling your strategy in addition to digging deeper into your deck, which will draw you into hand traps and other important cards that we're playing. Then the last Cybers monster that we play is 3 copies of Parallel Exceed. I haven't played this card in Salamangreat list in a while, but I felt that it was a really good card for multiple reasons. It's good at chain blocking. It's good at putting more bodies on your board. That way you can go ahead and extend further and hopefully OTK your opponent. It just has a lot of really, really strong aspects to it. Also, the other thing that's really good to note is the fact that it gives you a free rank 4 XYZ monster if you're going first, which is actually super busted this format. Then some hand traps that we play. We have 3 copies of Ash, 2 copies of Nibiru, and 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. So I'm playing these 8 hand traps, no other hand traps in the main deck, and I want to discuss the Nibiru more than anything, but I feel that the Ash and Imperm can be covered fairly quickly, and that, you know, they can just kind of be reviewed, and they don't need much of an explanation. So the Ash obviously hits a million different decks. I don't think I have to go in depth with explaining Ash. That's just about as simple as it gets. Now, Imperm and Valor are similar in some aspects. However, if you play Imperm, it makes it more difficult for your opponent to hit you with a Triple Tactics talent, which obviously is a very strong card. So playing something like Imperm is really not a bad idea. The card's very, very strong, and it gets the job done. So those are my reasonings for the Ash and the Imperm. As far as the Nibiru goes, I don't want to get hit with Nibiru personally, so I'm playing some cards to counteract that, which I think everyone can already guess what the card is, but I figured putting the Nibiru in here is a good idea. It just does a whole lot for you, so playing those, in my opinion, is a very strong hand trap lineup. But let's go ahead and hop on over to the spells, playing 3 copies of Signet Mining, because mining is a ridiculous card. Obviously, we all know that. It's just basically whatever Cyberse monster in your deck that you need other than your Parallel Exceed. So mining is fantastic, and it fuels your graveyard, which is obviously important in this deck. Then we have 1 Salamangreat Circle. It's literally just another Salamangreat monster. I don't think it really needs much of an explanation. If you don't have a Gazelle, you now have a Gazelle. If you open that, it's really good. Then for the other one-ofs, we play 1 Will and 1 Sanctuary. Sanctuary obviously has been a one-of for basically the entirety of this deck's existence, and then Will kind of changes for certain lists. Sometimes I play 2, sometimes I play 1. There was a point a while back, closer to 2019, when I was playing 3. So it's a good card. It's a really good card, but it's somewhat situational. Then we play 3 copies of Potted Desires. Desires is, as we all know, another fantastic card in this deck because there are a lot of multiples and you don't need to worry about banishing an excessively large amount of cards in your deck, and you can always do a lot of searching beforehand and then Desires afterwards. So card is just really solid overall, and it draws you into cards that can help your strategy out even further. Now for the card that was aforementioned, that would be our 3 copies of Crossout Designator. Now this card is very, very strong against Nibiru. You can obviously hit the Ash in your deck too if your opponent tries to Ash you. If they try and Imperm something, like maybe they want to Imperm your Mirage Stalio, or they want to like Imperm your access code, you can always just use Crossout Designator to stop that as well. I thought about playing 2 Imperm and 1 Valor, that way I had another target in deck, but I opted to just stick with the 3 Imperm because I didn't want to lose to talents. But this card is fantastic, very, very strong card. If you wanted to sub anything out in the main deck to kind of like give yourself more targets, you could get rid of the 3 Parallel Exceed, but I personally like the Parallel Exceed. That's just me personally. Or you could cut Ash down to 2 and Imperm down to 2, and then play another hand trap at 2 if you wanted to. But I think the 3 Designator for the Nibiru is just integral in this deck now. It's almost a necessity, which really makes our deck a little more expensive, but it's definitely worth it. Those are all the spells, though. Moving on to the traps, we play 2 copy of Roar and 2 copy of Rage. I've been a firm advocate for playing 2 of each of these for a while, and I still think that it's proper because if you banish 1 copy of one of them off of Desires, then at least you still have another copy as a backup. So I think that playing 2 and 2 is great. Having the counter trap and then having basically a walking 2-card pop for most of the time is also fantastic. So playing 2 of each is definitely the best route to go. And then the last card in our main deck is the card that everyone always begs to be banned, and that is 1 copy of Imperial Order. I've said it before and I'll say it again, this card does not need to be banned. If you really think it needs to be banned, I would reevaluate playing the game because you're probably really bad at playing the game if you think this card should be banned. It's perfectly fine, it's perfectly healthy. There's a ridiculously large amount of spell cards that are in circulation that are ridiculously powerful, so having something to counter that is perfectly fine considering most people have outs in their deck, such as Cosmic Cyclone or Twin Twisters, that will play around Imperial Order because they can chain to the activation. So that's very important to note. This card is perfectly fine to have at 1. But that is the main deck. We're going to go ahead and hop on over to the extra deck now and take a look at our Salamangreat extra deck strategy. Okay, so now we're on to our extra deck. Extra deck is pretty standard. I'm going to run through it with you guys and explain my choices, but nothing in here should look out of the ordinary for what most people would see in a Salamangreat deck list. So we're playing 3 copies of Salamangreat Balinks. This is your link 1. It's your starter in the extra deck to go ahead and search your field spell in addition to start your link summoning process. So you definitely will play 3 Balinks. It also avoids destruction of your Salamangreat monsters and just Salamangreat cards, so you could avoid the destruction of like Will or Sanctuary as well, which is actually very important. So Balinks is a fantastic card. Then we have 3 copies of Sunlight Wolf, which is great for his co-link effect, being able to add back a spell or trap. He also has this other effect of a monster being summoned to a zone that he points to, allows you to grab a fire monster from your grave and add it back to your hand. So that's actually something that does come up very frequently because you're recycling your resources over and over again, unless you just access code OTK your opponent. So this card is just a fantastic card to recycle spells, traps, and monsters. So keep that in mind. Then we play 2 copies of Heat Leo. I see some people, doesn't happen as much anymore, but for a little while there's a stretch where people were just playing 1 of this, which I thought was terrible because playing 1 means you can't do your reincarnation summon, which if you can't do your reincarnation summoning with this deck, there's really going to be a problem. So definitely play the 2 copies of Heat Leo. Don't play 1 and don't play 3. Just play 2. It's perfectly fine at 2 and it gets the job done. Being able to shuffle back row, and then if you need to adjust attacks on the board, you can do so with the reincarnation summon ability. Moving on to the other link monsters, though, for the only other link one we play is 1 Lingery Bow. This is really good against anything that plays traps. I'm glad this card got a reprint too, because for a while the Ultra was actually pretty expensive. I don't know what they are right now, but for a while the Ultras had a decently hefty price tag on them for it just being a random ultra rare card that not many decks play. So playing the 1 copy of Lingery Bow is good against anything that is going to drop some trap cards on you. Then the link to Cyberse monsters, we play the Splash Mage and the Update Jammer. I feel that these should pretty much go without saying that it's a requirement. Like you just have to play these 2. The Splash Mage really helps you go into your access code when you're kind of in a tight spot. And then the Update Jammer obviously provides you with the OTKs that we all know and love with the deck. So not too much to add there. And we have 1 copy of Transcode and 1 copy of Access Code. The Transcode typically is going to bring back your Update Jammer, so you could link the Transcode and the Update Jammer into our Access Code. There are scenarios, though, in which you use the Transcode to bring back like a Sunlight Wolf, and then you just have the co-link Transcode and Sunlight Wolf, and now your opponent can't target them with card effects because they are co-linked. So there are obviously some scenarios that come up with the Transcode, which are cool. And then the Access Code, I don't even have to go over this. Like everyone knows why this card is being played. Like there is literally no explanation necessary. But that is the link monsters. Now we're going to take a look at the 2 XYZ monsters that we play. Play 1 copy of Stalio, which I feel should go without saying because like it's a really important part of the deck, being able to summon a Salamangreat from your deck and then go ahead and use the link materials to, you know, make a Sunlight Wolf, and then you can go ahead and you can use Stalio to bounce a monster on the field if it's used as one of those link materials. So Stalio is just really, really good. I love this card so much. During Eternal format, this is like a lifesaver because you just link it off into a Sunlight Wolf, and then you could bounce their Thunder Dragon Colossus, which completely allowed you to keep playing the game and do whatever you wanted to do. So that's why Stalio is really good. And then lastly, we have our Abyss Dweller as our last monster in the extra deck, as well as our second XYZ monster that we play. Dweller is really, really good alongside the Parallel Exceeds because it gives you easy access to making a Dweller. Now, if you don't have the access to the Parallel Exceed, you could still use like Falco and your Jaguar to make it. It's not as commonly seen, but it can still happen. I've had it happen plenty of times in the past, so don't be surprised if something like that were to happen and it really won you the game, because so many things are graveyard reliant this format. Being able to stop your opponent's graveyard is just a win condition in that of itself. That, however, is the end of the extra deck. We're going to hop on over to the side deck so you guys can see how we're countering the meta in games 2 and 3. Alrighty, now we are going on to our side deck. Side deck is, in my opinion, something that should look like a lot of side decks right now for the most part. It doesn't look excessively different from anything that I've seen, but then again, who knows? There are some things in here that I kind of want to change. I just have to go ahead and grab a card or two from my locals. So we have 3 copies of Artifact Lancia because countering half the meta with this card is ridiculous. You counter Virtual World, you counter Tri-Brigade, you counter Invoked. Like, there's so many things that this card counters. So Lancia is just a fantastic card to play for a multitude of reasons. Then we have 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird. I think that this really goes to show how powerful a card is against one particular deck, and that deck is Drytron. But also keep in mind, this card is really good against a lot of rogue strategies. It's really good against, once again, Stall and Invoked, like that kind of stuff. Anything that searches a lot, this card is just really good against. So definitely play 3 in your side deck, and if your locals just looks like straight Drytron, then just main deck it because that's your best bet. Then for the spell cards on the side, we play 3 copies of Forbidden Droplet. Droplet is fantastic. If you can't afford it, I would advise getting Dark Rulers, but typically speaking, the Droplet is going to be significantly better, and it helps counter a lot of decks that you need to counter. So definitely consider playing the Droplet if you have access to them. It's fully worth it. Then we play 2 Lightning Storm and 1 Feather Duster. This is going to change to a 3rd Lightning Storm rather than playing the Feather Duster. That's what I was referring to. My locals only had 2, and now I have to go back and see if they have a 3rd yet. Because I think it's so much better, and going forwards with the Sword Soul archetype coming out, it's going to be better to play something like Lightning Storm in the side deck rather than playing Harpy's Feather Duster. So I think the Lightning Storm is a lot better currently, just because it's a monster or spell and trap board wipe. Then the last card that we side deck is 3 copies of Rivalry of Warlords. I think a lot of people know how strong this card is. I've been playing a lot of Dragon Link recently, and for a while I was main decking this in Dragon Link because it's just so powerful. It cuts off so many different decks from being able to function, and really kind of puts a damper on your opponent, or at the minimum puts them in a tight spot to where they have to think about a really weird and wacky way to get out of the position that they're currently in. So I think Rivalry has a bunch of different great aspects to it and things that it really does to impact whatever deck you're playing against. So keep that in mind. It is just a really good overall card and gets a lot done for you in really weird, sticky situation type matchups. But that is the last card in the side deck, which brings the deck profile to a close. That was the main, the extra, and the side deck all in order, and hopefully that was pretty helpful explanation wise as to why I'm playing the ratios that I am and what I personally think about this strategy currently as it stands. I really love this deck, as many people know. I've done very well at events with this deck over the course of time, and I definitely continue to play it in the future because it does some pretty neat stuff that is it's very, very fun to sit back and watch unfold. So if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Obviously, don't forget to smash that subscribe button, turn the notification bell on, and I will see you guys in the next video. So for right now, this is Team Yugi Feels signing out.